All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Ilona Bass. I'm a postdoc working with Elizabeth Bonowitz and Tomer Ullman at Harvard. And today I'm excited to tell you about some of my dissertation work that investigates how learners may use informants' beliefs about their abilities to calibrate choices during pedagogy. So, children and adults alike learn about the world from the people around them. And I'm going to start by suggesting that, at least intuitively, effective communication requires informants to consider their audience's prior beliefs, understanding, and abilities. So, to illustrate this point, imagine that right now I just started telling you about the results of our experiments. This would be a pretty unhelpful way to start this talk, right? But on the other hand, if I started off by focusing on material that you probably all already know, this would also be pretty unhelpful. So this is just to highlight that without a clear and accurate understanding of a learner's prior knowledge and abilities, effective teaching can be difficult. And this reflects an intuition in pedagogy that good teachers should teach at the appropriate level for a learner. But that also means that learners need to judge whether teachers are selecting appropriate material for them. So pedagogy thus entails a recursive inference process, which has been captured by past computational accounts, such that teachers should accurately represent the learner's abilities in order to select good evidence, and learners need to consider whether the teacher has actually done so. But critically, this step of the recursive reasoning process hasn't really been directly tested in past work. So are learners actually sensitive to whether teachers' demonstrations are at the right level for them? Well, we do know that children's exploration after observing a pedagogical demonstration given to another child is similar to how they explore after being taught themselves. But this is not the case when observing direct instruction to adults, suggesting that children at least attend to whether overheard teaching is likely to be relevant to them. But these effects raise important questions about how exactly our inferences are shaped by what we believe a teacher knows about us, which has yet to be directly empirically tested. So here, we're going to suggest that learners should generally follow the recommendations of a teacher who ostensibly has an accurate understanding of their abilities. But if the teacher's representation underestimates that learner's abilities, they should independently seek out additional challenge in a subsequent learning task, and that this kind of challenge seeking might instead be curbed if a teacher's representation overestimates that learner. So today, I'll start by telling you about the general method we used. Then I'll present results from experiment 1, which was run with adults, and experiment 2, which was run with children. Next, I'll discuss some post-hoc exploratory analyses we ran on the kid data, and then I'll wrap up with some discussion and future directions. All right, so first, the method for the experiments, which were run over Zoom. So after signing on to the call with the experimenter, participants were introduced to the teacher, who, unbeknownst to participants, was actually a pre-recorded video. And so we established that the teacher was experiencing some kind of technical glitch, such that she could hear the experimenter, but not the participant. Then participants played the experimenter's matching games. These were just simple picture memory matching games where there was a target picture, then an array was flipped over, and participants had to identify the location of the match for all target pictures. And completed matches were lined up on the side of the screen under this counter. So participants played 2 matching sets with the experimenter, an easy set and a hard set. And this task was controlled such that everybody finished the easy set and nobody was able to complete any matches on the hard set, so everyone's final counters looked like this. Then came the critical manipulation. So the experimenter pulled up a display of participants' results on the screen. This display was either accurate, or it overestimated the participants' performance, or it underestimated the participants' performance. And then the teacher re-entered the call, saw the display up on the screen, and noted how she was about to go pick out some new matching games to play and would keep their performance in mind while doing so. And so this created between subjects conditions in which the teacher either overestimated, underestimated, or accurately represented the participant's performance on this matching game. And I can actually show you an example of a child in the overestimate condition here.
So I can see that you were able to finish the easy matching set and the hard matching set. So I'm actually going to go pick out some new matching games for you to play right now. So I'll make sure to remember that you were able to finish both matching sets when I'm picking out the new games. Okay, be back in a sec.
So actually, Elise, okay, well, she left. Well, shoot, so did you hear that? So Elise thought you were able to finish both my easy matching set and my hard matching set.
Which is not true.
Yeah, and really you finished the easy one and not the hard one. So it seems like Elise thinks you were able to finish the hard matching set when really you didn't.
So after the participants saw the teacher form this representation of their prior competence, the teacher then came back and presented 3 new matching games. One game she said she thought might not be hard enough for them, so correct matches on this game would be worth 3 points each. One game she thought would be much too hard for them, but matches would be worth 5 points each. And one game she thought would be just right, and so matches would be worth 4 points each. The teacher then left the call, and participants ranked their preferences for which game they wanted to play. So to code these choices for analysis, rankings were assigned different weights and chosen games were assigned different values. So here we'll primarily be analyzing the weighted average of this ranking, where higher scores represent choosing more difficult games. So what should we expect participants to do in this task? Well, when choosing to play one of the 3 presented games, you might compute something akin to the expected value of playing each of these 3 games. And this can be thought of simply as the maximum number of points that could be earned by playing a particular game, which we know, weighted by your belief that you'll be able to successfully complete that particular matching game. Which is unobserved and actually critically trades off with the maximum possible reward for each game because harder games are worth more points. So how might the probability of success be estimated? Well, in addition to being influenced by your beliefs about your own competence, which here was participants' actual performance on the matching games, the probability of success will also depend on the actual game difficulty, which again, we don't know. So how might we infer this? Well, we'd have to look to the available evidence, namely the teacher's statement about how difficult she thinks the game will be, and critically the teacher's beliefs about the learner's competence. So the actual difficulty of each game, which in theory the teacher knows, and the teacher's beliefs about the learner's competence should mutually inform the statement the teacher makes about how difficult she believes each game will be. So learners can thus use the teacher's statement to reverse infer what the actual difficulty of the game is based on how competent the teacher thinks they are. And so qualitatively, this model predicts that learners should choose games that the teacher assessed as being more difficult in the underestimate condition and less difficult in the overestimate condition, with the accurate condition falling in between. And actually here is that same child again in the overestimate condition, providing a much more cogent explanation of our predictions than I ever could.
I think that the green would be like the actually like best for me, because if she thinks that I finished the harder one and the easy one, and that the orange is just right, I actually think that the green is just right because she says it would be a little easy.
So, in experiment 1, we put these predictions to the test in a group of adults, and in line with our predictions, we found that adults preferred easier games when the teacher had overestimated their abilities and harder games when she had underestimated them, while those in the accurate condition were falling in between and were more likely to go with the teacher's recommendation. So this suggests that adults do indeed consider a teacher's beliefs about their abilities to calibrate choices when learning from that teacher in the future. In experiment 2, we wanted to know the extent to which children might also be able to use what an informant believes about them to guide their future learning decisions. So we ran this task with 6 to 8-year-olds. I will say that while younger children are also sensitive to subtle cues about others' knowledge and pedagogy, this task involves reasoning not only about pedagogically presented evidence and the person providing that evidence, but also that person's false beliefs about the child themselves. So because of this implicit second-order false belief reasoning, as well as the added attentional demands of running this task over Zoom, we opted to recruit 6 to 8-year-olds here. And here we found exactly the same pattern of results as we did in adults. So when the teacher underestimated their abilities, children wanted to play harder games, but when she overestimated them, children instead preferred to play games she thought would be too easy. And children in the accurate condition again fell in between. So now I'll be moving into our exploratory analyses that we performed on the kid data. So first, we just wanted to look at any potential effects of age on children's choices here. So we correlated age in months with difficulty scores separately for each of the 3 conditions. And what we found were non-significant correlations in the overestimate and accurate conditions. But when the teacher underestimated children's abilities, older children were more likely than younger children to compensate by choosing games that the teacher said would be more difficult. And so this might reflect something about children's confidence in picking games that they were told would be too hard, but I'll unpack this a little bit more in the discussion a bit later. Then next, we wanted to know whether there were differences in the degree to which children objected and tried to correct the teacher's beliefs across conditions. So you might recall that girl from the videos before was pretty persistent in trying to communicate with the teacher that her beliefs were incorrect. And so we wondered whether there were any trends in this tendency across conditions. So we had blind coders code the degree of protest at 3 time points: when the teacher formed her beliefs about the participant's competence, when the teacher came back with her new games, and when the teacher signed back onto the call for the last time to say goodbye. And at each of these time points, protests were given a rating of 0 to 5, and we computed the average of these 3 scores for each participant. And intercoder reliability here was high, above 90%. So first, we just looked at the number of children who protested at all across the 3 conditions, and we found that, as you might expect, children were protesting more in the 2 conditions in which the teacher was inaccurate. And then we also compared the average degree of protest across conditions, and this analysis was also significant. And post-hoc pairwise comparisons revealed that protests were more vehement in the underestimate condition than in the accurate condition. Okay, so now moving into the discussion. First, I'm just going to recap a little. So today, I showed that both adults and children consider a teacher's beliefs about their abilities to rationally and directionally calibrate future learning decisions in a way that aligned with the predictions of our causal model. We also found that in the underestimate condition, with age, children were more likely to compensate by choosing to play harder games. We also found that children were more likely to object during the task when the teacher had inaccurate beliefs about them, and that they were more vehement in their protests when the teacher specifically underestimated their abilities. So I think this work provides insight into the richness of early learners' ability to consider others' knowledge when learning from their teaching. So beyond just being sensitive to what a teacher knows or how this could shape what they choose to demonstrate, learners directionally adjust their choices given new demonstrations from teachers depending on their beliefs about them. And further, children appropriately protest in cases in which the teacher has a false belief about their competence. And so I think this really puts the recursive nature of our models of pedagogy to the test with a novel empirical demonstration of how this could directly affect learning. So there are lots of ways in which I can see this work being extended in the future. So first, it's unclear whether participants thought the teacher's judgment of their performance was limited to this particular matching game task, or whether they saw it as an evaluation of their competence in general. And I think this will be really important to characterize in connecting this current work to formal educational contexts and making connections as well to the notion of student-teacher rapport in the classroom. Second, in our model, the probability of success on a particular game was contingent upon the child's perceptions of their own competence, which we held constant, but actually manipulating this variable could tell us something about the role of confidence in driving challenge-seeking following pedagogy. And in fact, it's possible that our age effects in experiment 2 reflected older children having higher confidence in their abilities to complete more difficult games. But testing this directly will be really important. I also think there are still open questions about what exactly children's protests were reflecting. That we saw similar frequencies of protest in the over and underestimate conditions suggests that this might be about objecting to receiving pedagogy from a teacher with false beliefs about you. But the higher degree of protest in the underestimate condition could also be capturing something about reputation management, for instance. So teasing these explanations apart will be really important, especially as we're thinking about when and why children might choose to protest when receiving pedagogy in real-world contexts, and how this could shape the kinds of instruction they receive in the future. And finally, it's possible, and maybe even probable, that false belief reasoning abilities could support the ability to make rational choices in this task. So it'll be critical for future work to both see how performance on this task develops, and also investigate the role of theory of mind reasoning in supporting these judgments. All right, so that's it. Thank you so much to everybody displayed on the slide right now. And please don't hesitate to contact me at ilona.m.bass@gmail.com if you want to follow up. Thanks.